Look, if you ask some people out in the streets, they'll look you dead in the face and tell you, listen, the MCU is dead. It's over. Who cares about the future? Secret Wars, Deadpool 3, X-Men, Fantastic Four, it's all gonna be trash. And speaking of trash, we got the Marvels. What is that gonna make, $3 at this opening weekend? It's not worth seeing. Let's take a step back. Let's have a deep breath and remember all the goodness the MCU has given us for the past 13 years. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the Marvels. Is it that bad? Is it worth checking out? Well, let's find out. What is going on to all my MCU Marvel movie fans out there, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you all my spoiler-free movie review for The Marvels. That's right, the film that's going to apparently kill the MCU as we know it. We're here to talk about it in today's spoiler-free review. But first, I want to talk to y'all in the comments below. Let me know if this is a film you all were excited to see, but more importantly, once you have seen it, what worked, what didn't work. Share your thoughts about the direction, the story, the performances, the CGI, the chemistry amongst the cast, and also if you've seen Captain Marvel 1 and now you've seen the Marvels, which one did you prefer? But also, what is this, the 33rd film in the MCU? Where does the Marvels rank on your personal MCU rankings? Let's talk about it in the comments. So listen, unless you've been living under a rock the last year and a half or 2 years, or just frankly minding your business, because ain't nothing wrong with that, you know the Marvels, the MCU I should say, has been kind of a roller coaster, right? We've had the No Way Homes, the Shang-Chi's, WandaVision, Low-Key, and some other, so-so projects, but it's also been some bad projects. I'll be the first one to tell you it's been a bit of a downfall, but it's not dead. It's not over. I'm still an MCU fan. I'm excited for the future, but that's just me. But listen, in the last couple months or so, especially the last 2 or 3 weeks, the Marvels has been on the target for a lot of people. Like, I'm talking, everyone's a box office expert. How much is going to make $2, $3 at the box office? Everyone's talking about the behind the scenes drama. Like, I haven't seen a film get so much just kind of like negativity surrounding it in a very long time. So listen, at the end of the day, we're here to talk about the film. I will be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. But first, I want to start off by talking about the positives. And I want to start off by talking about Nia DaCosta. Now, just a little side note, I'm a fan of her work. I believe it was Little Woods that I saw a few years ago, Lily James, Tessa Thompson, really small character study film that I really enjoyed. Candyman, you got to understand, man, I'm from Chicago. I love the original Candyman. I wasn't the biggest fan of the sequel, whatever that thing was they made a couple years ago. I liked her direction. I just didn't like the story. But I say all that to say this. Marvel, MCU, I know you're kind of recruiting some talent in the bullpen. You want to keep some directors on the roster. I think after watching this film, Nia DaCosta should stay on the MCU payroll because she does a really solid job of really kind of putting together what I consider to be kind of a Frankenstein of a film. Let's just put this in perspective. This was a lot of moving pieces in this film. Number one, this is a sequel to a film that made over $1 billion 4 years ago. This is also essentially a season 1.5, season 2 of Ms. Marvel, but also a continuation of Monica, who we met in WandaVision. Also, you got Nick Fury and all the other stuff going on. So when you really look at it, there was a lot of moving pieces she had on her table, and I thought for the most part, again, it wasn't perfect, and we'll get into that later, but I thought she did a good enough job of making it a fun, entertaining film that has a lot of cool comic book moments that we'll talk a little bit about later. So I would like to see Nia directing, whether it's a Captain Marvel 3, other characters that she seems to be a big fan of that I would like to see her tackle. I thought Nia DaCosta did a good job because you can just tell that she's having fun. She's a fan of the lore and the characters, and she's trying to make a side mission with these fun characters that have really great chemistry. And I was also very surprised by how she was able to kind of have fun within her world while still playing the MCU. And speaking of the MCU, the way she's throwing in little Easter eggs and the way the film kind of ends and also post-credit scenes definitely speaks to the larger MCU narrative, especially when it comes to the multiverse. But I'm telling y'all right now, the thing that really made this film entertaining, had some emotional beats, was everything coming from Iman Vellani, who I'm going to say right now, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, a lot of other great people that they have, Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace to him. Perfect casting. Iman Vellani is on that kind of Mount Rushmore as far as characters that are just, or actors that are just perfectly casted. seeing Kamala Khan and everything. Listen, I watched all of Miss Marvel. I loved all the family, the charisma from the character, all that stuff. I wasn't the biggest fan of like the villains and the comic book stuff of that show, but the human story was what made that show. And all that goodness from that show is injected in this film. I'm telling y'all right now, I can't wait to see more of Miss Marvel. I can't wait to see her sharing a scene with some of these other younger characters and some of the characters like Peter Parker, because she just has an energy to her. She has such an electric, charismatic, fun character. She's us. She's a fan of the MCU, and we get to see that on screen, and she's so great, as well as all of her family. Like her family, I didn't expect them to be in the film as much as they are. Sure, sometimes like they get a little bit more screen time than I think that some of the other main characters should have gotten, but I just love what Miss Marvel and the world that she brings to the MCU and how she plays in this narrative really fits well. But she's one MVP. The other MVP is Teyonah Parris as Monica Rambeau. I'm a big Teyonah Parris fan. I think she is such a talented actress. I also have a big crush on her. She is beautiful. She is gorgeous in this movie, number one. But putting that aside, I really like Monica Rambeau, and I love the energy she brings to this film. Like, there's this sense of like, she's a mama bear protecting Miss Marvel. She's also a new superhero from WandaVision, but she also has animosity, kind of built-in tension with Carol Danvers and everything that went down with, you know, what we got in the first film. So I really like the energy she brings in, and also her look, her design is so cool. Her power sets, like seeing, they don't call her photon, but seeing the spectrum energy powers that she has and the capabilities she's able to do. She's a hero. She's one of my favorite new characters that have branched off from Phase 4, Phase 5, and, you know, everything we're at. So I really love their two roles in this film and how they play into this movie. But more importantly, what they did, which is something I was a fan of with a particular character, that is Captain Marvel himself. I don't have many things to say good about the first Captain Marvel. Like, I like 50 to 40% of that film, but I'm a Brie Larson fan. Like, I know she's a great, talented actress. Like, she has an Academy Award in her shelf. Like, she's a fantastic actress. But that first Captain Marvel, the screen presence, the charisma or lack of, it just wasn't working for me. But Captain Marvel is boosted in this film. Miss Marvel, Monica Rambeau add more appeal to this character, who I think is kind of wooden in the MCU. And it's not just Captain Marvel. I said the same thing about Doctor Strange. Like, I love those actors, Brie Larson and Benedict Cumberbatch, but I think they're kind of not the best for their roles, but that's another conversation for another day. But I really like that they allowed Brie Larson to have personality, because if you have seen her other films, seen some of her interviews, like, I know people hate her for whatever their reasons are. She's a fun individual, and she gets to have fun in this role, and I think that's because she's able to bounce off of two fun, energetic, one, you know, is a super fan of hers, one is her niece, essentially. So I like that they were able to allow Brie Larson to have fun, to have Captain Marvel have fun. There's some jokes from Captain Marvel. There's some levity from Captain Marvel that we didn't get in the first one. So I really appreciate that they were able to make this character a lot more appealing. Now, as a fan of the MCU, I got to talk about the action here for a little bit. I thought the action was really well done. The choreography fights. I also like how they were switching powers and the visual aesthetics that came with that. And also, I know a lot of people were like, oh, this movie's only, what, an hour and 45 minutes? That smells trouble. No, I thought that the pacing really worked because, as we'll talk about later, the story ain't that great. So we kind of breezed through a couple things. So I like the pacing that's going on with this film. And I want to wrap this up without spoiling anything and talking about the bigger ties to the greater MCU. To me, this film has more connective tissues to the multiverse than Doctor Strange 2, than Ant-Man Quantumanium, and a couple other films that have tried to tie into the MCU as far as the multiverse goes. Like, Loki has been doing it right? But this film definitely speaks to the larger story with Phase 4 and Phase 5 and dealing into multiversal situations. So I really was shocked by how impactful it was in the world building. And then last but not least, post-credit scene, no spoilers whatsoever here, I'm hyped. I'm very excited to see where this goes because it means big things are coming. And I'll just leave it at, I'm not over, this isn't hyperbole, I'm not blowing smoke. Like, this is actually a post-credit scene that actually has weight, and I really enjoyed that. And then I just want to say this, and I'm going to tiptoe around this. I like the last scene of this film because it is a great tip of the hat, a reference to the very first Marvel Cinematic movie in the MCU with Iron Man, and I really appreciate the very last scene in this film. Now look, the film isn't perfect. I will say, I talked about it a little bit earlier, that the story is a bit of a mess because it is a bit generic. You've seen it before. We're going to talk about the villain here in a bit, but the way the villain is injecting the story is like the sympathetic villain who's trying to do good in their eyes. Like, we've seen this before. And the story, again, it's a Frankenstein going on. Like, to me, it took a while before the actual story picked up. Like, it wasn't clear on where this film wanted to be in the first half, but eventually it finally became cohesive at a certain point. But for about 15-20 minutes of the opening scene, I'm like, what are we focusing on? Like, where are we going? What is the story about? It took a while to find its footing. Now, backtracking and talking about that villain, I'm not gonna lie, I don't even remember the villain's name. Like, throw this in the bin with like the dark elves villain or Whiplash. Like, I like the actress, she's really great in other things I've seen her in, but this is a placeholder villain. Like, you could have just inserted any villain to play the character. Like, it's very weak, very not memorable, and again, the motives, you've seen it before, it's nothing new. So I kind of feel bad for the actress because, again, I know she's very talented, but it was just like the gold teeth and the power, like it was kind of convoluted in what they were trying to do with the character. It tries to tie it into the first Captain Marvel. It's like, nah, man, this was a miss. This is one of the weakest villains in the MCU, if you ask me. And then when it comes to the humor, we all know the MCU humor is hit or miss. Like, we know Kevin Feige loves humor in his Marvel films, and this is a lot funnier than some of the more recent MCU films. Like, this is way funnier than Ant-Man 3 and Love and Thunder, but not all the funny beats work, and there are two scenes. One in particular that they could have just completely cut out. It involves a planet of people and how they communicate, and there's a bunch of dancing and singing. I could have went without that whole scene. Like, it felt like a very, like a Disney scene. Like, if you've seen princesses and princes, like, it was like, dude, I could have went completely without that moment there. And then there's a scene involving cats. I'm a dog guy. My dog's over to sleep, and I don't got nothing to get cats. You know, we got the Flurkins and we got Goose and all that. But at first, I'm like, oh, that's funny. But then it kept going and kept going. I'm like, yo, can we move on? And I won't get into more details about that. And then one last few points I want to mention. The chemistry amongst the three leads are fantastic. But then when the film kind of focused on the beef, the animosity, the tension between Monica and Carol, some of those scenes to me felt forced. Like, the acting was fine, but I don't think the execution was all that good. And trying to build this whole, like, you left me, where were you? And kind of stick it on that note. The way the film tries to tell us that Captain Marvel, what she's been doing for 20 years, I still don't think the MCU knows what Carol's doing in space. Like, it doesn't make sense where she's been at and what she's been doing. And also, speaking of not making sense, what is the MCU doing with the Kree? And also, what the hell are they doing with the Skrulls? Like, I don't want to see a Skrull ever again. Like, they are just pointless characters. I know we got Gia running around the MCU with all the powers in the world, but I am so tired of seeing Skrulls because they're just pointless characters. And last but not least, I hate to say it because I'm a big Sam Jackson fan. I like Nick Fury, but the last few times I've been seeing this man, and particularly in that garbage show Secret Invasion, and now bleeding into this, because it's also, I forgot to say this is also a continuation of Secret Invasion. Nick Fury to me right now is almost like what we saw with the Hulk, right? We saw the menacing, savage nature of the Hulk, but then he gets a little goofy, then he's Professor Hulk, and now he's this, I don't know what he is at this point. Nick Fury isn't that bad, but he's a joke. It's just Sam Jackson and an eye patch just telling jokes. It's like, nah, man, I want to get back to that more kind of Nick Fury spy espionage. Like, you don't want to mess with that dude. He's 10 steps ahead of you. Like, I need that Nick Fury back. The same way I need that menacing Winter Soldier Bucky and I need that savage Hulk, I need that smart, intelligent Nick Fury that isn't cracking jokes every 2 minutes. So with all that being said, those are my pros, those are my cons. Before I give you my score, my overall thoughts, if you stuck around to this point in the review, I want to take the time to thank you. That's right, you right there. If you haven't already, consider hitting the like button, sharing today's review, but also consider subscribing to the channel. Overall, The Marvels isn't the train wreck that the media has been making it out to be. Like, sure, the story has some missing beats, a little bit uneven at times. The villain is trash, as I mentioned, but I can't stress enough how much fun I had with these three leads, especially with Miss Marvel, Captain Rambeau, and how they were able to make Captain Marvel so much more appealing. This movie to me is 10 times better than the original Captain Marvel. I also love how it plays much into the bigger MCU and the world building to the multiverse, more so than Multiverse of Madness and also Ant-Man Quantumanium. The movie isn't perfect, but I don't want you all to take the negativity surrounding this film from stopping you to seeing a fun, action-packed space adventure with some chemistry that I really enjoyed amongst the leads. I'm gonna give the Marvels a solid 3 out of 5. I had fun. I had a good time with it. No, this isn't the MCU film that's going to bring everyone back on the forefront, but if you go in with just like, I want to have a good time, I like these characters, I like to see some action, and I want to know what's going to happen next, I think this is going to work for you. But if you're one of the people, look, I'm not going to tell you to go spend your money. If you don't like where Marvel's at, this isn't going to bring you back in. If you haven't liked a lot of the recent projects, there's, of course, the people that's going to hate this film because there's women in it, there's a black director in it, so I'm not really speaking to them, but you know who I'm talking to. You know what you like, and I think this is a film that's worth checking out in theaters, but that's just my opinion. I want to know yours in the comments below. Once you've seen it, of course, I don't want to hear from people that hasn't seen it, just hating on it just to hate it. I want to talk to the people that's actually giving this film a chance. What worked, what didn't work, favorite moments, favorite characters, where does this rank amongst your MCU? Like, I'll probably do a ranking in the next few days or so, but let's have those conversations in the comments below. Thank you for watching today's review. Before we wrap up, just a reminder to like, share, comment, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. You all are awesome. Hope you're staying safe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.
Yeah.